The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, boarders, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the rise and shine of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and thrilled to be part of the Dice Tower Network as well. I am one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who is bright enough to make my mornings. Josh, how are you doing today?
Oh, I am just fantastic. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm pretty good. So, I've shared a few photos on the Twitter of these new board game cabinets that are being built.
Yes.
And they're almost done. Very close to done. And right before recording our podcast this evening, it became time to move the largest piece from the garage to the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And there were multiple moments during that I thought I might die because we have pretty, not super steep steps, but decently steep steps.
Uh-huh.
And this thing was really heavy. It was a situation where I wished I had a Coach Mo in my life close by who could have come, picked it up with his one arm, and taken it down the steps no problem. Whereas me and my partner, I think both almost died trying to move this thing.
That doesn't sound good.
It wasn't good. It got to the basement and nobody did die. But there was definitely moments of thinking, hey, I wonder how much I could have paid to have someone else move this piece of furniture. It was very heavy. I think probably on its own is probably the heaviest piece of furniture we own at this point now.
Did you have to pivot?
There was pivot was said. We did have carrying straps, so that definitely helped.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, when you've moved as often as we have, you start to accrue some of those items. But yeah, so hopefully soonish, pictures of this finished project will be shared, completed. But the biggest obstacle, or one of the biggest obstacles to finishing this project was completed. And now I kind of want to die.
Well, that's good, though. You must feel relieved to have the biggest part done.
I mean, that is definitely a way to look at it as well. I am relieved for that. How was your weekend, sir? It was Father's Day weekend. Happy belated Father's Day.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, my wife went away for the weekend, so it was a great Father's Day weekend. I kid. Yeah, my wife was away for a bachelorette party on the Cape for Friday night into Sunday morning. So it was me and the little guy for 2 days, and got to sleep in my bed by myself with my arms stretched out and my legs stretched out like a starfish. It was nice. And then I cooked dinner on Father's Day because, well, I like to do stuff like that.
No, nothing wrong with that. So we're all fingers and all toes still accounted for?
Yep. Okay. Every body part is still intact.
Excellent. And no sickness was had.
No one got sick. It's also good. And today was our last day of school. So I transitioned into days for the next 2 months.
Y'all get out pretty late up there. Or is this because
normal.
Of snow?
This is normal. No, we only had one extra day because of snow. Yeah.
Man.
I mean, the colleges were out earlier, but for high schools, like, this is normal.
This is super late from what I'm used to. But that's because you get that President's Week off, don't you? Or is that only a New York thing?
Is that in February?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have February vacation. So we have 5 days off in February.
Do you also have a spring break in addition to that?
There's an April vacation. Yeah.
Y'all just taking breaks all the time.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So that was a big controversy because there were so many snow days, and this wasn't such a big deal here, but I know more in other states that there were so many snow days that states passed basically snow day relief bills that schools didn't have to fulfill their contact hours necessarily. But for hourly employees, suddenly they were just done. And so they missed out on, X number of days that they were supposed to work that they didn't because the school was closed.
Yeah.
But now they just, so that was an interesting thing to kind of consider that I don't necessarily know if it was considered as much when it came to just saying, hey, we're done. Now you just don't get paid anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, we have to fulfill our days. We don't have one of those forgiveness bills here. So they had a half day today because they had to be at the school today. So they did a half day.
Excellent. Well, hey, we've chatted about random things, furniture, end of school long enough. We probably should move on to the fact that, hey, we're a gaming podcast. So thanks so much for joining us this week, everyone. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter, or check out all of the very cool things that Josh is posting over on the Instagram, also Board with VG. If you check it out right now, you might see a pretty fancy looking game right now.
Perhaps.
We are a proud part of PSVG, and PSVG is on Patreon. We are absolutely thrilled with the support you have given us there thus far. And if you'd like to monetarily support what we do, you can find us there at patreon.com/PSVG. But the most important thing is just that you listen and maybe share our podcast with someone who you think might enjoy what we do. I do want to give a quick shout out, though, to our producers over there on Patreon: Coach Hulk, Edwin Kahlo, Barry Cathcart, Josh Borboni, Chris M., Devin Tyus, Paul Calicote, and Benny Liu. Thank you so much for all that you do and for supporting us with your hard-earned dollars. We're also a member of the Dice Tower Podcast Network, so if you enjoy our conversations about board games and would like to dive deeper into that world, we encourage you to check out the Dice Tower Podcast as well as all the other members of the network. No matter what type of board games you enjoy, there is a podcast on the network that is right for you. So Josh, we had E3, we had Origins, we had all of those super big shows that are coming up. And I thought that we'd have a regular show this week, but then in shifting through the news, I realized there's still a lot of news to talk about. So it's probably going to be another news extravaganza, and then things will hopefully get back to normal. But we're also going to take a different take on the news in the video game section. So we'll have to see if people enjoy it. It's going to be a little more hard-hitting news rather than, hey, this game got announced news. So we'll see how that goes. But Josh, what's some of the big news in the tabletop world?
Well, you mentioned it a second ago. Origins just ended. Today's the 18th, whereas we're recording. On the 16th, they announced the 45th Annual Origins Awards recap, or the award winners themselves. So we're going to go over who won.
Sounds great.
And we're going to start with Root by Leader Games won Best Board Game. It also won Fan Favorite, and it won Game of the Year, which I don't think it was too surprising to us.
No, that game has definitely won the hearts and minds of many, many people. So not super surprising to see that they were victorious.
Okay, so this one was surprising to me. The Mind by Pandasaurus Games won both Best Card Game and Fan Favorite, which Fan Favorite surprised me the most because you mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago, how some people love it, some people hate it. So I guess clearly the more people love it than hate it, because if it was voted Fan Favorite, not enough people were voting against it.
Right. Very, very true. How do you remember how the Fan Favorite works? Is it this top X number of games that win Fan Favorite, or do you remember how that works?
I don't recall. Because Root also won Fan Favorite. That's right. I'm not. I don't remember how Fan Favorite works for Origins.
So interesting, though. But yeah, it is. The Mind is definitely one of those games. The people who do like it, though, really like it. So I can see them wanting to come out in droves to support that. And maybe I feel like the Mind is kind of a game that is going to excel at conventions.
Sure.
So if you play it there, you have the opportunity to play it. You have a good time. You might maybe get frustrated, but you still had fun while playing it. I can see folks voting for it then as a result, not just because they own it and think it's great, but maybe they've played it at Origins or other conventions and had a good time with it. So it is kind of surprising, but it seems like this might be a place that it could really do well just because of the style of game that it is.
Yeah, it's easy to teach. It's easy to, pick up and play whenever. So I get that aspect, but I think I played it enough that I don't necessarily want to keep playing it.
Right.
But like if you or me were sitting down waiting in line for something and you said, want to play the mind, I wouldn't say no.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah, I think, I'm a little disappointed that Villainous didn't win.
Yeah.
But, the mind, it definitely has the hearts and souls of the board game populace right now. And it's definitely kind of one of those hotness games that gets talked about pretty regularly still.
Yeah. Yeah. Next one was Best Family Game. My wife will be thrilled to hear this. The T-Dragon Society by Renegade Games wins for Best Family Game, which I'm a big fan of that game. So more power to him.
Yeah, and that's cool. They've definitely had between this and then their games that won the Mensa Awards, they've been having a pretty good little award season here over at Renegade.
For fan favorite family game, Echidna Shuffle wins. That's by What's All Pogue Games. Oh boy, that's just look up Echidna Shuffle.
Yeah, that is a mouthful. So, okay, maybe this is my understanding. Is there a gallery winner or a choice amongst the people who are official voters, and then for every category, fans can vote?
Yeah, but if the Mind and Root won for fan favorite in what category?
Right, but I'm saying if Root won in board game and then the Mind won in card game, because then if we have for family games, if you have T-Dragon winning and then Echidna Shuffle winning.
That's what it seems like. Yep. So maybe fan favorite in each category.
Yep.
We'll find out as we keep going, right?
Indeed.
The next up was Best Collectible Game and Fan Favorite, Keyforge by Fantasy Flight Games. So yeah, it looks like it's in each category.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that. I don't know that I'm too surprised, but it's still nice to see them pull that out.
Yeah, especially against, that's the category that has all the big hitters of Pokemon and Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Star Wars Destiny's in there. It's nice to see, a newer game be able to kind of crack into that and say, hey, we're here. We're a pretty sweet game. People like to play us on Fridays and as well as Magic. So, yeah. Richard Garfield's got Friday nights on lockdown.
No kidding.
So, yeah, no, that's awesome.
We have Best Role-Playing Game and Fan Favorite in the category goes to Vampire the Masquerade by Modifius Entertainment. Good for them.
Congrats.
I don't know enough to say anything other than that. Best Role-Playing Game Supplement and Fan Favorite goes to Dungeons & Dragons. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes by Wizards of the Coast.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounds cool, I guess.
Do you not like the name Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes? I think that sounds awesome.
I mean, I guess it's a good name.
I don't know what it means. I don't know who Mordenkainen is.
Sure.
I kind of know what a tome is, I guess.
Well, I know what a tome is, yeah.
But I just wonder who the foes are.
The bad guys.
Well, right. I understand that. But how do you, is this like, not to spoil Game of Thrones, is this like Arya's list?
Perhaps.
That
you have to start playing the game. And
I know. And how did people get in the tome? How did they arrive there?
Next up is a big yawn from me because just coincidence. I'm just tired. We have Best Miniatures Game, Necromunda by Games Workshop and Star Wars Legion tied for Best Miniatures Game.
Yes.
And then Star Wars Legion won Fan Favorite.
I mean, if it won Fan Favorite, I feel like you just give it to her outright, don't you? It seems like that should be a good tiebreaker. I don't know.
I guess, yeah, that's probably a good tiebreaker.
They better come up with in the future their tie-breaking rules. That if after voting
roll a die for tiebreakers.
I'm just thinking of all the tiebreakers that I find in board games. Okay, so whoever
last person to visit a tomb.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever had the most votes after the first day.
Yeah,
those people really cared more, so they win. So if they're still tied, then.
Best game accessory goes to Dungeons and Dragons Black Dragon Trophy Plaque by WizKids, which sure sounds interesting. I have no clue what the heck it could possibly be.
Right.
Winner of game accessory fan favorite was Dungeons and Dragons Monster Cards by Gale Force 9. Exciting. Let's see. We have. I think did we cover the Hall of Fame inductees?
We didn't because they weren't announced beforehand, I don't believe.
Okay, so fantasy horror illustrator Gerald Brom and prolific game designer Vlad Chavatil were nominated or entered into the Hall of Fame.
Vlada Chavatil.
Sure. Vlada. Oh, I said Vlad, huh?
Yeah.
Sure.
He's got such a cool name. He has such an amazing name.
And not to be outdone, 2 board games were introduced into the Hall of Fame. Mage Knight by WizKids and Apples to Apples by Mattel, which is very interesting.
It makes sense, though, doesn't it?
I mean, it's the father of Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, it makes sense that it's there. But it is kind of cool that Vlada Chavatil got in, and then one of his games got in as well. Because he did Mage Knight. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Right. And then Jamie Stegmaier was awarded the Rising Star Award in its inaugural year. So that's pretty exciting for Jamie.
That is.
We had an award winner on our podcast.
We did. Now we could say that we're a podcast with award-winning guests.
Yeah, for sure.
Got to think about how you place those words in there and just be like, hey, yeah, the award-winning podcast guests of Board with Video Games.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, any big surprises for you or pretty much what you thought would happen?
Yeah, I don't know that I was going to be surprised one way or the other. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's... I don't think that board game awards come around too often where there's big surprises because you kind of have like an idea of who the front runners are going into these things.
Right. Very true.
So, no, I'm happy with all the winners. Just makes me want to buy a Root more.
Yeah, I'm gotta wait till this fall. I'll have it, but it's a ways away.
Oh, that's right. Kickstarted it, yeah.
Yeah, I am looking forward to because we'll in a couple of weeks here beginning the Dice Tower Awards for 2018.
Yes,
I am very much interested in how those all shake out. So.
I'm more interested in the Dice Tower Awards. I think not because we're affiliated with them, but I've always followed their opinions more than like Origins or Gen Con award winners or stuff like that.
No, I agree. I think too, just they have so many more board games, whereas Origins has a lot of D&D stuff, or I should say role-playing stuff and things that just don't quite fit into our purview quite as much. So definitely looking forward to how those Dice Tower Awards shake out.
Yeah. Cool. So next we have some app news, some digital games. So first up, Mystic Vale has since released on PC, Mac, on Steam. It's on iOS and Android. My wife actually has it on Android. Mm-hmm. I purposely didn't get it on iOS because I'm switching over from iOS to Android. So once I get my phone in at the end of this week, Mystic Vale will probably be my first board game purchase on it.
Oh, really?
It's going to be interesting because I have to rebuy all my stuff since I'm going from Apple to Android. And if I look on my phone right now, I have 27 board game apps on my phone, and I would say I paid for 20 of them.
And you're giving them all of those up.
And I'm giving those up to get rid of Apple.
Wow, you must really hate Apple.
Well, it's a combination of Apple and Sprint. So yeah, I'm happy to get rid of both of them. We don't need to be talking about why. This is not the podcast to do that. But for our app news, this is from Board Game Geek for Mystic Vale. It says, yes, you can now play this transparent card builder on that device you carry around in your pocket or on your PC. It does also include the first expansion, Veil of Magic, for free, which is good. I'm assuming that means they will be releasing more expansions. It's $5 on iOS, $5.50 on Android, and it's $15 on PC/Mac. It's $15 on Steam. I can say I saw maybe it was Suzanne showing the difference between playing it on iPhone and iPad, and there's a different layout for the game with the bigger displays.
Oh, okay.
So I think maybe that's why PC is 15. It's probably a better experience.
Gotcha.
And you see more of the board, which is nice. But yeah, it's out there. It's a game that my wife loves. I am fond of. I haven't played it enough to sing its praises yet. We've only really played it once, and it was at the AEG Big Game Night. The first PAX Unplugged.
Oh,
but
gotcha.
we own like all the expansions now and the big box and all that. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of Mystic Vale overall, and it is a little interesting because the game is. I'm looking at its Steam page right now. It is $15, and then it's another $20 for all the DLC.
Well, if it's all the DLC though, that's pretty good.
Well,
it depends on what they added in.
Okay, it says never mind.
Like
it's
future
$10.
DLC.
Well, it's very weird because it says add all DLC to cart for $19.97, but it's Veil of the Wild is $5, Veil of Magic is $5, but then there's a season pass for $10.
Oh, so they released the others.
Right. Yeah. So really, I guess it's $10 for So the season pass will include all 3 expansions. So never mind. So it's $25 then for everything on PC, which isn't bad. And according to their Steam page, it now has cross-platform play. So if you have friends playing on iOS or Android or Steam, you can all play against each other, and that's pretty cool.
Nice. That is good. Speaking of board games on Steam, Scythe adds Invaders from Afar to the Scythe app. So Invaders from Afar introduces players to 2 new factions, Clan Albion and the other one, who have deployed their emissaries to scout the land and plan their best strategy to conquest. So you get 2 new factions. You get what else? 2 additional players to join Scythe Digital Edition. That's good, for up to 7 players. The expansion also adds 2 player mats, Militant and Innovative, offering players new strategies to master. Further determining what they can bolster, upgrade, produce, deploy, move, build, trade, and enlist. All those things you get to do in that game. The expansion is $10 to add on to the already existing version of Scythe, which is $20.
Correct.
Cool. And then for me, what was big for digital was Asmodee finally did 2 streams of Gloomhaven. They did a stream during E3 where they did a 2.5 hour stream where the developers, the designers played and kind of taught people how to play Gloomhaven, which was a little excruciating to watch because they didn't just play the game.
Right.
They announced a July 17th release date for early access on Steam. It will only be single player in early access. They did say when I when I responded to their Facebook post, I asked them what's going on multiplayer, and they did respond to me saying that it's in the works but will not be available during early access.
Well, at least they said that, though.
At least they responded, yes.
Yep.
We don't have a price yet.
What do you think the price is going to be?
Ooh, that's a really good question because there's a lot of game here. And from what I could tell, they said it's not the exact same scenarios as Gloomhaven the board game, but it looks like they will be just as many. And it's totally interactive. I really think they could get away charging $60 for this game. I don't think they will. I think we're probably looking at a $40 game. But if they charged $59, I think that's fair.
Do you think people in general, especially board game people, are going to balk at that price?
Yeah, of course, because there's established board game prices already for digital versions. But you're also not digitizing $120 board games. True. So, I mean, for single player, I think maybe $60 is expensive. But if they do something like $40 and then they charge like $10-15 for a multiplayer DLC or add-on or something, I think that might be more fair.
Okay.
But they're going to want to make money. So I think $40 is probably the best way for them to get the bigger audience. But we also like we're in this industry where board game players who maybe want to get Gloomhaven, even like someone like Lucas who wants it, but he knows like he might not get to play it that much, but he has a PC.
Right.
And he wants to play with his wife, and it has technically local co-op. It's single player, but you control more than one character. So you could sit down with somebody and play the game co-op, which I already talked to my buddy about. He's like, my friend who I play Gloomhaven with, he's like, you're going to get it, right? I was like, I don't know. It's like co-op. He's like, you're going to get it, right? You should get it. Because the game looks great. If you got a chance to check out the streams, you can go on Asmodee's, I want to say Facebook and probably their other social media. They put out like a shortened version of the first stream. So it's only like 20 minutes long instead of 2 hours long with highlights from the stream. So it looks great. So they did a really good job with it. Have you checked anything out as far as this goes?
I watched the stream for a while, and I think it surprised me. The game looked, and this is going to sound bad, I don't mean it to, it looked much more like a video game than I anticipated it would.
Yes.
It very much looks like a turn-based strategy game. It really surprised me in how much it looked like a video game. So when you say the $60, I don't immediately say, oh, that's way too high. But I do think that in general, in the world of board game apps, when you say $60, people are going to say, oh, no, that's way too expensive. Yeah. But this is, I don't know how much my partner would be into Gloomhaven. That's one of the reasons I've never pulled the trigger on it. But this might be a way that, I would get into it. So I definitely going to keep a close eye on this and see especially what that price comes in at to kind of determine whether or not I jump in.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Well, speaking of video games and board games, we have some crossovers. First up, City Skylines is coming to board games via Thames and Cosmos, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
They are known, not known, they are known for quality board games. So this will be interesting to see. And I would say, would you argue that they're mostly family friendly board games?
I think that is a pretty reasonable. Yes, I would say, yeah. Cause they're the ones who did like the
puzzly board games.
Yeah. Cause they did like the exit games, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I think in general, they're definitely a little more family friendly or lighter weight games as a whole, for sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see how they'll do this. It's going to be a 1 to 4 player cooperative game.
Mm-hmm.
Where
the cooperative part
and develop. Yeah, you plan and develop a metropolis together. So this is from Dice Tower News. It says to create this thriving city, you will need to expand while keeping in mind pollution, traffic, crime, and other problems that arise throughout the course of the game. Replayability will be high as there are multiple starting scenarios, which is good, where you will build different cities with unique buildings as you attempt to keep the population in a good mood. I don't know that this necessarily is a game for me, with all that being said, like population management and building management.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's awesome that it's coming to a board game to the board game world. It's set to come out in October.
Right.
What do you think? Is this interesting to you?
I think it is interesting. When I look at it, it very much reminded me of New York 1901.
Yep.
And then it said it was cooperative. So then it's not New York 1901. But, for better or for worse, it looks like a lot of games in this genre. So I think, it being cooperative and hopefully the gameplay will set it apart from other city building games. It's something I'm definitely interested in. The price is super reasonable.
$35.
Yep, because you can pre-order it now. So price is very reasonable. And the publisher, like you said, has made traditionally good games. At the very least, they're good, if not better than that. So, if you're willing to take a risk, it seems like a pretty safe-ish bet. But yeah, I'm definitely interested to kind of see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, it looks cool. The pieces are like Tetris pieces, design-wise, with city pieces inside those. So that could be interesting. We'll have to see where that goes.
Right.
Also, in the board game, video game meshing, amalgamation, if you will, we have Company of Heroes is being made into a board game by Bad Crow Games. It's on Kickstarter. And Yeah, it's 2 to 4 player game. There's a solo and co-op campaign as an add-on option that utilizes strategy to outmaneuver your opponents. It's advertised as a real-time strategy game, but has the option of playing as a turn-based game as you attempt to build your economy to grow your army, participate in mostly diceless combat, upgrade your troops by investing in them, and choose your commander to complement your playstyle. Comes with 32 vehicles, 150 infantry figures, 55. It says mostly diceless combat, and it comes with 55 dice. 44 figure trays, 120 acrylic markers, and 12 production tiles. I can tell you as of the 18th, that's today, they are sitting with 7 days left on a goal of $100,000. They are at $504,000.
Indeed.
And if you look at the game, it is very impressive looking. And it's only $65 for a 2-player core set. If you want the true core set for 4 players, it's $99. But,
yeah. And if you want all of the other stuff that they kind of show, it gets quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah, if you go, let's see, the full $195 for the collector's bundle, $150 for the battalion bundle, which I think is everything minus whatever the collector's has. But yeah, they're not painted miniatures. They kind of show you what they could look like. I mean, this is definitely a Wargamers game.
Yeah.
2 giant maps, but I think it's like a little interesting blend between Wargamer and Board Gamer because it has it feels like a board game.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see who gets this.
Yeah, it definitely is that balance between, often people who play hardcore war tabletop games or do war gaming. There's not a lot of, there's either really old miniatures with, they're doing the Revolutionary War, or there's just like chits and not actual miniature games. There tends to not be a lot of between that. And this is kind of doing the between. It's giving minis that are tanks and things like that you don't see all that often. So I think it's interesting. I think it's a cool spot to be in. The production quality from what they show looks really good. I think if you want all the stuff, it seems pretty expensive, but if you're just interested in checking it out and kind of getting in, getting the 2-player, if you have one other person to play with, that 2-player core set isn't that expensive. Obviously, you're getting a lot more if you can bump up just a bit more to the core set or the company bundle. But overall, really not too bad for kind of what they're giving you. So,
yeah.
And it looks cool on the table. The pictures they show of it all set up has a table presence, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely looks nice. Definitely lots of quality production in that game, which is good to see.
Indeed.
Okay, so this weekend, Toy Story 4 releases into theaters. People seem to be very excited.
They do.
It's getting great reviews.
It is.
But we also have a new Toy Story game coming. Well, actually, we have 2 new Toy Story games coming this fall from the OP, or USAopoly, for people who haven't caught on yet. These were announced at Origins, and we have Disney and Pixar's Toy Story Obstacles and Adventures. It's a 2 to 5 player game that will you'll take on the role of iconic toys from the film: Woody, Buzz, Bo Peep, and Rex, as they work together to overcome hazards and progress through a that's poorly worded. Progressing storyline. This is on DicetowerNews.com, just so you know. This isn't from me or Kyle. The game will come with 6 boxes of cards, which will each be based off a different movie in the IP. So this sounds like it's going to be similar to the Harry Potter deck builder, the Hogwarts Battle, the way that it's set up.
Mm-hmm.
Boxes are unlocked, and then elements of each respective movie or show will be introduced into the game and bring new characters, antagonists, and challenges for players to explore. And correct me if I'm wrong, I have it right next to me. I can probably just look. But yeah, the OP did Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Hogwarts Battle. So maybe this is a new trend we'll be seeing where they can take these IPs and just kind of move them into the system they already have that works pretty well.
Right. Real briefly, who's the fifth character, you think?
Well,
they only name 4.
Woody,
but
Buzz, Bo Peep, and Rex.
But they say it's for 2 to 5 players. So what do we think the fifth character is?
I got it. Well, on the front cover is...
I guess Jesse's on the front.
Jesse.
So I guess it must be Jesse then. Yeah.
It could be Jesse. It could be the dog.
I got to imagine if she's on
Slink.
Yeah, but I got to imagine if she's on the cover that it's got to be her, right?
Yeah. But it also says you unlock more characters too as you progress. So I'm assuming there'll be more than just
even that.
5.
That's true.
Yeah, that should be interesting. I'm all on board. Like, I love Toy Story, and if it's working off that Harry Potter deck builder game, like, what a great license to add to that.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Cool. And that's ages 8+. And the other game was a Toy Story licensed collector's chess set. So that kind of fits in with the other branding as far as like the Monopoly versions of games and stuff like that.
Definitely.
All right. So on to the weird news. Jurassic Park, the Chaos Gene board game, was to become a thing by Mondo, who, if you know great art and posters and now even vinyl soundtracks, you know Mondo. And they even have a very interesting game coming out from Restoration Games. Restoration? Yeah, Restoration's doing that, right?
Yeah.
So we don't really... Do we know what's happening with this game?
No, because it was supposed to be out last fall.
Yeah. So Mondo's... well, I'll just read Mondo's thing for it. So they said, we're celebrating 25 years of dinosaur chaos with the anniversary of Steven Spielberg's unequaled Jurassic Park. And Mondo Games is excited to unveil our next board game, Jurassic Park, the Chaos Gene. Movie fans and board game enthusiasts can expect exciting gameplay, gorgeous artwork featuring the immensely talented artist Matthew Woodson. The game will be available online on our website and in stores everywhere this fall. We'll have box top on display at Mondo's booth at San Diego Comic-Con, and attendees will have the opportunity to get a special Jurassic Park patch when visiting the booth. Now, I'm guessing this is from last year.
Yeah, this is from July 12th, 2018.
Okay, so we have not had any updates yet.
Nope.
This was/is to be a miniatures game, which looks interesting. But Kyle also very kindly put in a link to the Reddit to see maybe if there's any more info on what's going on.
Because the big news is it got delisted from Board Game Geek.
It's off BGG, at least out of the database.
Yep.
As this person says, that's very rare for that to happen. Pardon me. So I guess the question is, did they lose the license because they didn't get the game out in time? Or was the game just not ready? Did not look any good? Do they think they have to do a Kickstarter because doing a miniatures game is very expensive? I think there's a lot of different things that can come into play.
Right.
And someone looked up info that the company, the team that was doing this had done a previous Kickstarter that failed. So that could also have something to do with why it didn't get any footing. But they have a lot of licensed artwork for this game. So
Yeah.
I have to imagine that this game was pretty far along. I would imagine it still sees the light of day. I think it's just like board games. They aren't like video games where you typically see something get delayed a lot. So they might have just shelved it until they can get it finished, or we might never see it. But it looked really interesting.
Yeah, it did look really. It looked really cool, and is kind of disappointed that it just seems like maybe it went nowhere because the sculpts of the miniatures were really cool looking.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know exactly what happened or what's going on there. So it's super disappointing. I hope we get an update soon, especially since this has now come out that, hey, it's not on Board Game Geek anymore. And what's going on? I would hope that they'd announce something or give some update.
Let me make a prediction. If you go to their website, Mondo's website, it says fall 2018. So my prediction is if they didn't update the website, then maybe this is dead in the water.
It very well could be. But yeah, it looks like they had done a ton of work for it.
Yeah. Yep. That's too bad.
So anyway, sad news if you're a Jurassic Park fan. I guess you'll just have to keep playing Dinosaur Island.
Right, which they basically just sent out another email today saying that they're working on more Dinosaur Island.
Yeah, they are.
So
I know.
You'll have plenty to be excited about. Okay, so now we're into the announcement roundup, which I go at the same pace as I do as regular news.
That's
so
fine.
For people listening, we're in the roundup phase. The Dice Tower Essentials line is expanding, and it is now adding a game that has been picking up a lot of buzz on the convention circuit, Smartphone Inc. By Cosmodrome Games. I don't know too much about this game, but they describe it as like a food chain magnate light. 2 to 5 player game where you're manufacturing and selling cell phones around the world. At the heart of the game, players manipulate 2 double-sided cards, creating their quote pad. Each half of the pad contains 6 squares of icons, and by overlapping them in specific ways, players create their plan for the round. Visible symbols give actions for the round, while covered squares add additional product for sale, but inherently limit a player's turn. Essentially you're building a smartphone empire in this game. It's demoing at Gen Con Origins and Dice Tower Con this summer, and Arcane Wonders has stated that the awaited Kickstarter campaign for reprints will occur later this year. So Arcane Wonders, I believe, prints all the Dice Tower Essentials games.
Yes.
So I think that's big news in more ways than one, because not only is it getting that Dice Tower Essentials like seal, but it's also coming with a publisher.
Yeah.
Like if you get a Dice Tower Essential, you're getting a publisher for your game, which also means you're probably not going to see existing games. Like sometimes you get like the Dice Tower seal of approval or excellence, but this is something where like Tom's like, I want this game to be published by Arcane. I don't know like the deal he has with Arcane Wonders where he can like dictate what games they publish, but it must be pretty good if they'll like, I mean, obviously he doesn't walk into a room and be like, we're publishing this game, and they go, okay. Obviously there's conversations around that, but I think it's pretty powerful for a game period to have those 2 names come behind it, because Arcane Wonders is a great game publisher.
Yeah, they definitely are. And, you know, really, when you think of the games in the Dice Tower Essential lines, you know, you have Onitama and you have Sheriff of Nottingham. They've been really good games so far. So, yeah, just another, it sounds like excellent game that, you're right, has been very hot as of late, getting added to the list. So that's great.
Cool. We have a new Robotech game coming. Are you excited about this?
Nah, not really, but I figured, you know, Robotech's a decent name. It's kind of one of those that I've seen a lot of Robotech games. I don't know that I've ever actually played a Robotech game.
Yeah, it's Robotech Crisis Point. In fact, someone, was it Seth? Someone in our Discord just posted people were playing a Robotech board game on their lunch break.
Indeed.
And I wish I could remember. Was it Seth who posted that?
I will look while you chat.
I feel like it was Seth. So Solar Flare Games has announced a new game in their Robotech line of games. This is also from Dice Tower News, and so was the last story. Robotech Crisis Point, along with a new smaller expansion for Robotech Force of Arms, the Grand Cannon expansion. So Robotech Crisis Point is another head-to-head 2-player game in the Robotech universe. The players are fighting for control of the Earth, using hand management, area control, and bluffing mechanisms in order to do so. So, I mean, that sounds good. I like head-to-head 2-player. I like hand management. I like area control. I love bluffing mechanism. So it sounds like all those things sound good to me.
It was Nathan, and it was actually Battletech.
Woof. I probably just committed a crime.
Because these look so drastically different from one another.
Yeah. Sorry, fans of the 2.
Yeah.
I basically did a Transformers GoBots.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. And then I'm sorry for comparing one of those to GoBots. That probably was also unfair. Okay, well, I guess we're both not really interested in that one, so let's move on. We have a game called Dig Your Way Out by Borderline. It's a game that is on Kickstarter now.
Yep.
Okay. Dig Your Way Out. It's a 2 to 6 player game published by Borderline that puts players in the depths of a prison from which they are competing to be. I guess they couldn't get the prison break license.
Right.
You play Michael Schofield. No, Scoville. By competing to be the first to escape. To do so, you move around the prison to perform actions and equip yourself with tools and weapons that you can acquire through crafting, buying with cigarettes, or extorting other players. Okay, this game, I guess this is fitting. Got dark all of a sudden. Players can also get help by joining a gang. Oh gosh, and using their unique skills and connections from their previous life. Ooh. Artwork in Dig Your Way Out is from why do you do this to me, Kyle? Mahajalo Dmitrievsky, aka the Maiko. I probably should have just said that. Whose art has been featured in games such as Raiders of the North Sea, Architects of the West Kingdom, and Viral. Well, you got me sold on that because the art in those games is incredible.
Yeah.
The game will be available in English and French. The Kickstarter comes with an exclusive Officer Buster mini expansion. I'll give you some info on that Kickstarter now. I probably could have clicked that a minute ago.
Okay.
Their goal was $14,000. It is now at $54,000. There are 15 days to go. A $37 US pledge gets you the full game.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty good.
The art is interesting. For the characters, there are cigarette tokens.
Josh, there are cigarette tokens and beating tokens.
Which literally has teeth on the floor on them. There is a rogues gallery of character standees.
Yeah.
Yikes, Kyle. This game is definitely interesting.
Isn't it? I put it on here because I thought this was really interesting. Number one, the theme. How often do you get a game with this theme? But number two, it has cigarette tokens that you use for currency, and it has beating tokens.
There's toilet paper cards. There's a train card, a shiv card, a shovel card. So let it be known, listeners, sometimes I often don't look at what I'm about to talk to you about, and this is one of the surprising stories.
So now that you've looked at it, though, are you in any way interested?
Yeah, I kind of am interested. I mean, I probably won't back it, but I might pick it up at PAX. I'm sure they'll be selling it at Unplugged.
So I just thought it was a very, very interesting game with a really unique theme. And I thought the art was very well done for what it's trying to get across, if you would.
The art is good. It's comical, so it's not to be taken too seriously. It's super interesting. Yeah. It really is. Yeah, I would. If you're listening, just go check out Borderline on Kickstarter, or Dig Your Way Out. It'll come up for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And just check this game out and check out the art. Make sure you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page so you can see all the wonderful art in there. But wow, yeah, very interesting. Speaking of Kickstarters, Stockpile has an expansion on Kickstarter called Illicit Investments Expansion. Also, the Epic Edition is available to purchase. This is another. I've always heard Stockpile is like great, and it's also being sold at 50% off. Is that right? Because that's a great price. It shows 50% off here.
Mm-hmm.
That might yeah. It's a Dice Tower Seal of Excellence game.
Mm-hmm.
Has on a goal of $7,500. It has hit $101,000.
Yeah.
And let's see, $59 pledge gets you the game and 2 expansions.
Yep.
Or you can buy the expansions individually. Well, you can buy 1 for $12, or you can buy 2 for $25.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that, the $59 pledge, the MSRP of the items in the $59 pledge is over $100.
Yeah, $104.95.
So they're doing, it's really nice since they are selling direct to the customer. that they're giving a very, very good price. And yeah, if you're interested at all in getting in on Stockpile, which really is, like you said, a game that is well thought of, people really, really enjoy. This is a way to get in at a very, very reasonable price.
It's best described as what? A stock market strategy game?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are going to talk about, they compare it to Acquire a lot, and that if this had come out first, that this would be the game people talk about all the time instead of Acquire.
Cool. All right. And the art looks great as well. So check that out too. Speaking of Kickstarters and crazy amounts of money, at a goal of $50,000, Thunderstone Quest New Horizons is sitting at $247,000. And that's only because each game costs $2,000 to back.
Not quite that much.
If you are like Kyle, who previously got Thunderstone Quest, the big Giganto collection, it will only cost Kyle $65 more to get the new expansion.
Correct.
If you want to get the last campaign, the one that Kyle did get, you can get that for $120. That does not include the expansion. If you want everything, $250 will get you the game. $260 will get you the game with expedited shipping on the currently available version of the game, which means they have a bunch of games just sitting in their warehouse that they can ship out to people.
So what they did, and because this is what happened when I backed Thunderstone Quest last time, is basically what happens is they over order, because I just got my game for Thunderstone Quest when I backed it, I did the expedited, and then you get the expansion like a year later of when it was supposed to ship. But when they do that expansion, they do another run of the base game that they get at the same time, so that since they knew they were launching another Kickstarter, they could expedite the base game and expansions to people, and then they would just wait until that expansion came like a year later again. So it's not that they just have them sitting, they purposefully produce them knowing they're about to run another Kickstarter, and since they were just shipped a whole bunch of them over, might as well ship a few more.
God, this playmat is insane.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Oh boy, you get a playmat for $20. That's a pretty good price for the size of the playmat.
Yes, for the size of the playmat, it is a good price.
Okay, so if you are like me and you missed out on Thunderstone Quest, you can be like me and miss out on this one. But at least they're giving you another chance.
Yeah, it definitely is expensive. And
to end our Board Game Barrage, I'm not trying to steal the name. That is the name of a podcast.
That is, yeah.
Last Aurora by Pendragon Game Studios is also on Kickstarter. Last Aurora is a competitive post-apocalyptic game designed by Mauro Chaboto. Oh boy, I'm sorry if you're listening, people whose names I pronounce. And it's published by Pendragon Game Studios. It's currently live on Kickstarter. In a world where radioactive dust of the last war has turned the northern countries into a frozen, desolate landscape, 2 to 4 players in Last Aurora will work to manage their crew to gather resources, recruit survivors, improve their vehicle, fight their enemies, and make challenging ethical choices. That's exciting. All while they race to reach the last beacon of hope before it's too late. The icebreaker ship Aurora, which is looking for survivors. This is also from Dice Tower News as well. I think you should just assume anything I read to you is from Dice Tower News unless I say it isn't. It was funded in 18 hours. They were looking for $22,000. They are at $47,000 with 14 days to go. You can get a copy of this game for about $44 US, so
which really isn't bad.
Good price.
Yeah. I was trying to highlight a few games that were maybe a little more reasonably priced than what we have seen as of late, since you and I tend to bemoan the price of games.
Yeah, no, and it looks pretty good. It reminds me of that game I have.
Just that one?
Yeah, that one that was like Mad Max.
Are you talking Wasteland Express Delivery
Wasteland,
Service?
yeah, Wasteland Express Delivery Service. It reminds me of that. It's obviously not as big of a box, but even the trucks looks the same. The resources are similar, except they're not tokens; they're 3D modeled pieces, which is pretty cool. I would say the character art reminds me of Dead of Winter, if anyone has played that or seen it. And the board looks pretty cool. And they even have a playmat, which is even cooler. So I'm actually interested in this one. I wonder how long it would sit on my shelf before I played it.
Well, you'd have it, it's slated to deliver in February of 2020. So you'd have time to get through all of your other games before you got to it.
Interesting.
So,
well, that's not a bad price. $44 for a pretty big game, and I like the theme. Interesting theme.
Right. One thing I want to bring up really quick. Did you notice on the Thunderstone Quest Kickstarter that one of the items included in the pledge, when you pledge, it has tariff protection included?
That's pretty smart.
So it basically says that there will not be a change in shipping and handling if the tariffs go through as anticipated.
That's good.
So, yep.
I like that. It's scary too, but that's good that they include that.
Yeah. But I do wonder for all these other games that are kind of finishing up now that, what, if anything, is going to happen as far as all of those, because the game production is done or people have already played for production.
Right.
If they slap a huge tariff on it coming in, is everyone's shipping and handling suddenly going to double or triple to cover that cost?
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Very interested to see how that happens or how that all works out. All right, Josh. Cool. So we're going to transition to some video game news. And, E3's over. So there's kind of the lull, if you would, after, right? That people are kind of sifting through the news and catching up with little things they missed and reminders here and there about things. So I thought I would take a different spin on the video game news, and we're gonna go a little deep here, Josh. We're gonna wade into the weeds here, the things that we don't usually talk about, the things that can be scary to talk about. We're maybe even gonna get political about some stuff. Ready to do this?
I hope you're ready.
So, dear listener, if you hate this, let us know. But we're gonna go for it. So, a new report from Newzoo, who is an industry analyst who focuses almost exclusively on video games in the gaming market, has released their new global games market report, and that they're saying that in 2019, consumers will spend $152.1 billion on games. And that this is obviously not obviously, but this is a growth from the previous year, a 9.6% increase. Consoles will be the fastest growing segment this year with a 13.5% year-on-year growth, resulting in $47.9 billion spent on console gaming. And mobile gaming remains the largest segment, which will have about $68.5 billion spent on it. So that's a lot of money, lots of billions being thrown out there. The U.S. is now the world's number one games market. That the U.S. will overtake China this year, but likely go back to second next year. If you're not aware, China actually had a moratorium where they weren't approving new games for sale in the country.
Yep.
And that has now stopped, but because of kind of the head start that the U.S. had on the year, they figure the U.S. will overtake it for this year, but likely China will be back in the driver's seat the year after that. So with all that money being spent and all of that revenue being generated, a political candidate, Mr. Bernie Sanders, decided that, hey, he tweeted, I think earlier today or yesterday, quote, "The video game industry has made $43 billion in revenue last year. The workers responsible for the profit deserve to collectively bargain as part of a union. I'm glad to see unions like at IATSE and the broader at Game Workers movement organizing such workers." So, Josh, we're getting reports from market analysts saying, hey, games are making a ton of money. We got political candidates saying, yo, workers, you should probably unionize. And then we have companies like Amazon who during E3
laid off all their
laid off workers in their video game area.
Yeah.
So, who's right? What's going on here? How do you feel about political candidates now talking about working conditions and things that game developers should do?
So I saw that tweet today. I was surprised. I shouldn't say I wasn't surprised that it was by Bernie Sanders because he's a very strong union supporter.
Yes.
But I was surprised that it was him as far as the industry.
Right. I didn't think Bernie was too hip to the video game industry.
Well, I think Bernie is pretty hip to lots of things. So it is funny because it's like your grandfather's telling you about video games,
right?
Or your great grandfather in this case. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this when Riot was had their walkouts, and I was talking about what my thoughts on the importance of a union are,
right,
and how they would have protected them in that situation.
And to interject really briefly, and I'll let you back to your point.
Yeah.
I did not include the story about the state of California investigating Riot right now for how do they put it? I can't remember the exact word they used, but basically very deliberate ongoing sexual discrimination in their workplace.
All the sexual harassment stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is good that they're being investigated. It took their employees to walk out more than once to do it. But yeah, he's right. We don't know how a lot of these companies work in video games, but we also don't know that they're all being treated fairly.
Right.
And that's what a union does. Whether you're pro-union or anti-union, a union's job, whether they do that or not, is to protect employees and treat them all the same. So it should be protecting them from unfair labor laws, safe work environments, sexual harassment, fair wages, all these things. That's what the union should be protecting them for. And does every union work the way it's supposed to? No, but at least you have a something to hold them accountable to, a baseline for what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. And then you can worry about policing unions after that. But to establish a union, I think that's very important for gaming because we will at least know that people are getting paid relatively the same amount of money to do the same job in different companies, which is important. That CEOs or studio heads aren't taking more money than they should be taking for the work they are or are not doing. I think all that's important. So it's nice to see that they're taking notice. It's too bad it's taken this long for them to take that much notice. It's also interesting that they're using China as examples, and they're using a country that isn't necessarily known for fair labor laws as a example of profitable market. So maybe when a dictatorship is your example of making money for your country, it might be time to analyze how it's being done,
right,
and where the money is going.
Yeah. So I'm going to vastly oversimplify things just for the sake of time, but labor unions in the United States really started at a time when there was a desperate need for the safety and well-being of employees was basically being ignored at high-risk jobs, right? And at the time, auto manufacturing, mining, those sorts of jobs that were very risky to the worker, they were being overworked, underpaid. There was a lot of danger and risk that associated with the work they were doing. That's where a lot of labor unions sprung up from.
Yeah,
a lot of that style of job, not a lot, many of that style of job still have unions today. Some don't, but many do. With the stories we hear about the working conditions at different gaming companies, and Doug Bowser, I thought, did an interesting job of, people were really sad when they heard that Animal Crossing was delayed, and then Doug Bowser came out and said, well, right, but we could get it out this year, but I want my workers to have a good work-life balance. And suddenly everyone was okay with Animal Crossing coming out in 2020. Do we think, with the stories that we're hearing, is it a situation where you think a union would be important? Have we heard enough of the bad stuff, basically, that we feel as a whole, overall, broad generalization, I know there's going to be an exception to every rule, that working in the video game industry, for most people is not healthy for them. Do we think we're at that point where, yes, for sure, 100%, we feel confident in saying unions would probably be helpful in this situation?
Yeah, it's evolved. It's not physical anymore. It's mental. And when we hear stories about people having like meltdowns and going on leave from a studio for months just to get right in the head, like there's a part of our culture, and it's mostly the generation before us that have this snowflake culture where they think people are soft and they can't handle things.
Right.
It's just evolved. It's just a different kind of thing. And whether you're suffering physical stress or mental stress, you have to evolve with the way that the world is evolving, and unions have to do the same thing. And then they just need to protect their employees from the different types of quote unquote injuries they receive at work. And if you have to work 100+ hour a week for more than a month and straight, like that's gonna do something to you. Like we don't know that it will affect everyone the same way, but that's what the union would be there for, to protect them.
Yeah. So do you think, to wrap this part of this story up, do you think any other political candidates are going to step into the fray and discuss video games, video game workers, and whether or not they should unionize? Do you think this is a one-off deal, or is this something we'll hear more of in the future? Democratic
candidates will talk about unions. I can't guarantee it will be in the gaming industry in the positive light. And this isn't me picking a side. It's just history. And Republican candidates do not like unions. They will go against unions because that's where their voters are. So we'll still see the same political strategy and how can we manipulate this part of the world to vote for us. We'll still see that. I think it would be refreshing to see maybe a Republican candidate pick up a pro-union thing. Instead of blaming video games for violence, maybe we start looking into why it's profitable and if it can benefit the states or the country or the districts by getting more money into the country, to the cities, the states, the streets, whatever you want. I hope so.
Yeah. Yep. Very interesting. When I was born in far northern Minnesota, mine country, if you would, and it's actually very interesting because it is a very, very pro-union area because most of the people who work in the mines are part of the union. It's also very, very conservative, which I always found very fascinating, that they're very right-leaning, but they also are very pro-union, which you just don't see all that often. But I think depending on where the job is, and we could get to the discussion of the Democrats have abandoned that base and all of those other things, which is probably for a different podcast.
yeah, the podcast I don't want to be on.
Okay, we'll move on then to a really way less controversial topic. So this is going to be great. So a recent report that was published in Wired is talking about whether or not gender representation in video game protagonists has improved. You might remember a few years ago, there was a lot of conversation was started about the gender of characters in video games and who was on stage presenting at E3 and those sorts of things. There has been some improvement as far as gender representation in presenters. That is something that has gone up slowly, definitely nowhere near 50-50. But something that is definitely growing. In the most recent poll, though, when talking about video game protagonists of games shown at E3 this year, 22% were male leads, 5% were female leads, and multiple options where you got to choose was 65%. So, important thing to note that when this research started many, many years ago, I shouldn't say many, like 5, that multiple options was about 45% or so. And women or female was actually closer to 10%.
Yeah.
And men were at the 32-ish% area. So men have dropped and women have dropped in favor of multiple options where you get to pick. But Josh, we hear all the time about how, every game is just being turned into a female lead, but it seems like maybe that's not the case.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the case. This is such a divisive topic because no matter what I say right now, there's a group of people on either side that will be furious.
Yes, they will. Like I said,
Um,
we're wading into it tonight. We're going
it's
for it.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think you see this in board games too.
You definitely do.
People think that you add a female protagonist and then everything is better.
Yep.
And that's not the case because it needs to be way more. I think when you look at the protagonist by gender in the past couple of years, maybe you don't see a big jump in females because there's not a lot of new ideas out there. I mean, there is a lot, but when I'm talking AAA games,
right,
they're sequels and they're keeping mostly the same protagonist. But I do think you see a lot more female. I don't want to use the word companion because that is probably wrong, but sidekick, companion, whatever the word you want to use, like dual protagonist in the game, not just like a choice between male and female, but both like a male lead and then a female like co-lead. I think that's becoming more common. But it doesn't really matter because the numbers speak for themselves. Only 4.8% in 2019 games were female protagonists, and it's never gone over 10%.
Yep.
That just needs to change. People need to be comfortable playing as a female character also. And I don't know, is the question, are studios not making them because they don't think they'll sell because of this Gamergate gaming culture?
I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn seemed to sell okay.
Yeah, it's all great. And it's like, more of that, please. It's great to see the multiple options shoot way up.
Right. Yeah, the multiple options definitely has been the biggest increase where when you play the game, you now much more regularly have the choice between who you want to play as, which, like you said, I agree 100% is great that is the bulk now. Really, that is the majority of games at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and only like 5% at this E3 was female.
Right.
And we have other problems too. Like if you look at the Division 2, a conversation that Lucas and some of us are having, the rendering of female characters to male characters in that game, there's something wrong with that.
Right.
They didn't like
it definitely doesn't look like they spent the same amount of time.
There's something wrong with that. Yeah, I don't want to speculate, but you can definitely see there's something wrong with what happened there. So there's a lot that needs to be done pro-female in gaming. There's a lot of female gamers. Representation is important, and just because we're white men and we have representation doesn't mean that we should just be fine with it. And then it's like, oh, hey, it's fine. I'm represented, so I don't care who isn't represented. Like, playing a female protagonist to me has just as much, if not more, interest than a male protagonist.
Yeah. No, I agree there. I do think it's interesting because we see, I feel like, and I'm sure this number still isn't even, but when we look at women in high profile positions in gaming, I think you see actually a surprising, I don't want to say surprising in the sense of it shouldn't be that way, but a surprising number of studio heads that are female.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you see a ton of creative directors that are female. So when you look at, and again, I'm going to be able to name the ones I know off the top of my head, which probably is the handful that make it seem like it's a ton. But you look at Shannon Studstill at Sony Santa Monica, and Cory Barlog, though, was the person who was overseeing God of War. You look at, why am I blanking on her name? The person who runs Media Molecule. But there are women who are in high profile positions, but they're not the ones, quote unquote, making the games.
Right.
And I wonder if you had, even like Jade Raymond, so I wonder if you had more female creative directors, because I think there is something to be said from the perspective of how well could I create a game from the perspective of someone who is very different than me?
Yeah.
How authentic would that game actually feel if I made a game about a African-American female LGBT person? I can't imagine. Maybe I really have this cool idea for a story, but I can't imagine that I would be able to very effectively make that game feel authentic and genuine.
Yeah.
And I think that when people get upset or angry about hiring practices or trying to bring diversity into a workplace or anything like that, this is kind of the reason that's important, because I can only be as empathetic as I can be. I can never truly understand what those things are. And I think it's completely reasonable for me to create a game and have interactions that I have with friends and family and people that I care about represented as this is what my relationship is with my, LGBT friend, and that how I represent that in the game from my experience, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But for me to try to create that experience from their perspective, I think starts to come off as disingenuous, and I think it's very challenging to do that. So I think when you see the good examples of it, it's because there's something real there that only comes by having those people on staff or having those people in your studio and working on these things. So
right. And like on the flip side, so like this article says, it's worth noting that of the 15 speakers at Square Enix event, only 2 were women, and only 2 of the 17 speakers of Bethesda were women. This isn't a ratio we just want to fix. This is going to take time, because you don't want to just hire 15 women to do these jobs that aren't qualified, because then we have a whole nother problem. So it's going to take some time to get this like fixed, to get more women in game development. And I mean that needs to be taken account for, because we don't want that, just like the Band-Aid effect where, okay, yeah, we looked on LinkedIn and we saw, 15 girls who just graduated from like their gaming college, and we're just going to hire them. Like, you still need to hire the right people for the job.
Right.
So I think the biggest problem is, I would guess, as a male gamer, from what I hear, the biggest problem is getting women comfortable in gaming. If, we're still in this culture where people are gross, hateful, and vile to women in gaming.
Gotcha. Okay, now I'm picking up what you're laying out. Yes.
And that needs to be changed. Maybe that's why more women are getting into the gaming industry.
Right.
And I was just reading stuff from Alana Pierce's Twitter and the stuff she has to deal with.
Right.
And it's disgusting. And I don't want to just tweet back at her like, I'm sorry for what these people are doing and saying to you, because she gets it all the time too. And I'm just another dude saying, I'm sorry.
Right.
Like that this is happening to you, but like, it's terrible to see stuff like that. And, I don't know. I just wish people knew how to be civil and glorify. Like I saw someone, maybe I'm showing my age. Maybe this stuff doesn't like work for me the same way anymore, but someone posted like fan art from Final Fantasy VII. And it's just this like over sexualized Tifa picture. And I'm like, can you just like, that is not a practical way to fight any bad guys. Yeah. Can you just let it go? Like, this is the only way you can see a female protagonist in a game is breast falling out of her shirt and this tiniest skirt you ever saw in your life. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. And it's a delicate line, it's a challenging line to walk, right? Because I love Bayonetta. I think Bayonetta is an amazing game. I love the character. I love the games. And I think there are definitely, and that's where it's hard, right? Because there are
the developers are over sexualizing the character on purpose.
Right. And I think what's challenging in that is there are females in the industry who I really respect who say everything with that Bayonetta is fine. And there are some who say that she's not okay. Yeah. And, and again, this isn't, my life is so hard as a male gamer by any means. But, when trying to figure out the best way to support and the best way to talk about these issues, it can be, it's a constant doing the best to learn and doing the best to listen and doing the best to understand as best as we can and moving forward. And we'll see what happens.
Be genuine about it. Like, if you're like, I'm not saying that people can't like sexualized Tifa, but it's just not for me. But you should also be honest. Like, if you like that kind of stuff, that's fine. Just say, like, admit it and don't like, I don't know. This is a loopy wormhole I'd go down. Like, sexualized fictional characters don't Don't over sexualize real people. Don't sexually harass real people.
Yeah.
Or fake people. Don't sexually harass anybody.
Yeah. Let's not sexually harass people. That just seems the best idea. And I think the biggest, and this isn't genuinely, I'm not trying to take a shot at this company because I do think that this was just par for the course. PSVG hasn't been around all that long. We've been doing this thing, play some video games as a whole has been around for a while. And, Board with Video Games obviously came from that. But, I can't remember if it was I think it was the first E3 that we talked about that we had where Microsoft had hosted an event that had strippers at it. Yeah. Strippers at it. That wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't all that long ago, and they apologized after. But the fact that people thought that was okay, because that obviously took planning, and a lot of people had to look at that and say,
someone was like, "I know where we're going.
Right,
my favorite place."
that isn't all that long ago. So, all right, moving on. Josh, video game actors.
Yes.
So you might remember not all that long ago, they were on strike for a while. Speaking of unions, they went on a 340-day strike because they felt they were not being adequately compensated for their work. One of the biggest things about that were residuals or back-end payments, that if a game did well, they didn't see anything else on the flip side after the game was shipped. They got paid a flat fee, and that was it. Now, there's an article in LA Los Angeles Magazine, from E3 talking about video game actors are still fighting to be treated and paid like on-camera actors. And the biggest thing that they focus on here is residuals and the idea of getting money if a game does well, and that there is a back end that kicks in. Josh, should video game actors get residuals? Should they get a little bonus if games sell well?
Yeah, pay your actors. I don't understand why this is complicated. Okay. Look at how much money people make for voicing animated Pixar films. They get residuals. Pay your voice actors. In fact, I would argue most video game voice actors are better than actors who voice Toy Story and How to Train Your Dragon.
Wow.
Because they do it as a job. They are professional voice actors.
Throwing Tim Allen under the bus.
I'll throw Tim Allen under the bus every day. Maybe not Tom Hanks, but I have no problem throwing Tim Allen under the bus. Yeah, pay your actors. They're part of SAG-AFTRA. They're part of the same union.
Yes,
pay your voice actors. This shouldn't be a debate. They shouldn't be treated differently. They are actors. It's in their name. Pay them. Pay them. Pay them. Pay them.
Okay, so. And I know
Go ahead, do it.
This is a trap question. But Josh, all the people who actually made the game, it's not like they get paid extra or back ends or residuals. So why should the actors?
The best boy or the producer or the line producer or the cinematographer, they all get their own deals. They're not getting residuals. That's just how it works.
Okay. I was waiting for maybe they should too, but that works too.
No, directors get rituals. Some producers do. It's all part of their contract. They have different contracts than actors, and that's just kind of, being able to act is a different skill set than being able to direct or produce or be a cinematographer. So I think that aspect of the film industry works fine. But these voice actors, they should be paid like actors because they are literal actors.
All right. Well, we're going to keep moving on here. I told you, that was kind of the softball of the entire
That was an easy one.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So we've had this discussion on this very podcast, Josh, about video games and violence, correct?
Yes.
And we said, hey, video games don't cause violence, right?
I would still argue they don't cause violence.
Okay, so we better really hope that's true because according to a new report from GameIndustry.biz,
they get that good .biz there. That's a very official.
Yeah. Actually, GameIndustry.biz is pretty reputable.
Okay.
They actually are. But 17% of the games shown at E3 can be classified as non-violent. 17%.
Sure.
So Josh, does that surprise you? Does that worry you?
No, it doesn't surprise me. In fact, I'm less surprised. I thought it would be a bit higher percentage for violent games.
I'm not going to lie. I actually thought it would be closer to like 10%.
Yeah. Nintendo, are they including Nintendo? Because they weren't at E3. If you put Nintendo into that category, that percentage changes drastically.
They
One way or
counted
the other.
Nintendo, and they counted cartoon violence as violence.
Which, yeah, and that's when people have to put in cartoon violence on the ESRB. That's a very wide variety of wide range of what they consider violence. Like Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo's using Kazooie as a weapon. Like, that's violence.
Right.
Smash Brothers, violence. Like, punching, kicking, I get it.
So what they were
a lot different than Watch Dogs.
Yeah. So what they were going for is that they're trying to identify titles where the central mechanic was not death. So a football game, even though there's hitting, is considered not violent. Whereas, the Lego Star Wars games, when all the pieces blow into a whole bunch of stuff, that is death. So that counts as violence. So that's kind of, not going to argue whether that makes sense or fits perfectly, but that's kind of how they were approaching it, where the central mechanic of the game is not you killing people.
Well, we got to revise that because football is violent, man. There should be higher percentage of violent games because hitting people as hard as you can is a violent.
I probably, yes. But again, like I said,
let's make it only 14% of E3 games are non-violent.
Okay.
No, it doesn't surprise me. This will always be an issue. And this games and then music, which has changed. It used to be music, will always be blamed or always be looked. Someone will look for these inspirations in people's lives when they do something terrible. It will always be the case. So I don't think video games will ever escape that. But if they did E3 and 100% of the games are non-violent, that's not changing anything.
Right. No, absolutely.
Because we still own all of those violent games at home.
Yeah. I think what was interesting they said there were 41 games that were considered non-violent shown at the show. Of those, only 17 are from major publishers or platform holders. And of that 17, 8 of them were games that were included in the ID at Xbox.
Well,
so really we're down to 9 that are from major publishers, because ID at Xbox is helping getting the game to the platform, but isn't necessarily working hand in hand to develop that game per se, right?
Yeah. Microsoft featured 10 non-violent games on stage, but that's the 100% driven by combat violence. Right. That's pretty funny.
Not surprising.
Only 7% of Nintendo's E3 Direct titles were non-violent. That might explain why Kevin was so mad about Nintendo's conference, because it's not very Nintendo.
Yeah, Animal Crossing was the only one that they considered to be non-violent.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't know, Kyle. What do you think? I just think we're just in this. Violence it's part of our escape. It's something we don't do in our normal lives, which is why it's in our video games and movies. I would like to see, out of all the movies released in 2019 so far, how many of them were non-violent?
Yeah,
0.
I think for me, the biggest thing, and they very clearly say in the report, this is not meant to decry the level of violence in the industry. This is not meant to anything like that. For me, it really talks about, and games are different. I don't want to say the lack of creativity, but part of me wants to say the lack of creativity.
Sure.
Where we get so stuck on how do you interact in this game while you kill things. But
I don't want 80 walking simulators every day.
And I'm not saying that we want all walking simulators. I'm just wondering, is there a different answer that we just haven't gotten? And what is that? And where are that? And it definitely seems like those are coming from the indie space. Yeah. And obviously there are puzzle games and other things that fill that void. It just is very surprising to me that we haven't gotten that other thing or that other style of game that is really pushing into the market and taking a little bit bigger chunk of it than what we're seeing right now from these major trade shows. And obviously, who knows when you can, look at the industry as a whole for how many are released each year? No idea. This is obviously looking at a very specific point in time at a very specific event that has very specific goals. But I think it's still just an interesting thing to kind of look at and just start to hypothesize and think about, what could be different? What are different things that we could do? Are there different ways we can approach this? Or are there other ways we can be creative when it comes to how we interact with games?
Well, we need to figure out competitive gaming without violence. That's what it is, right? That's why everyone wants to kill, because it's the competitive gaming part of it. Like maybe we need more. Well, I was going to say maybe we need more Mario parties, but that part of that game would be considered violent.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I do remember being a kid and when hearing about my parents talking about violence or trying to decide if I could watch something because of violence, and then I would watch Saturday morning cartoons when things would get run over by trains and
violence.
So, like, well, whatever, I guess. So anyway, all right, final story we're going to get into, also from GameIndustry.biz. Feel free to make fun of their name again if you'd like.
They probably have the money to buy the .com.
They probably do.
Just do it.
So it looks like that Microsoft has quote unquote won E3. And you might say, well, how did they win E3? Well, according to GameIndustry.biz, they looked at the amount of basically press that was received after E3, and Xbox took up the most coverage with the year, really focused a lot on Keanu Reeves, it seems like.
Well,
seems like Keanu Reeves and Cyberpunk and Project Scarlet really are what drove a significant amount of the coverage and articles and social media and all of those things when it came to E3 2019. Now, if we'll say, Microsoft, for every 100 mentions of Microsoft, Nintendo had 82 mentions, but PlayStation had 76.
They still managed to get mentions at E3. I don't get it.
And they weren't even there.
Yeah.
So, Josh.
Yes.
If you're PlayStation, are you feeling pretty good about all this?
I guess. I don't feel good about PlayStation, but yeah, I guess they have no reason to feel bad about skipping E3.
Because they actually, now when you look at, going back to 2014, every year other than 2017, PlayStation quote unquote won on this metric that GameIndustry.biz is using based off of articles, mentions, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So in 2017, Xbox had 100, whereas PlayStation had 98. So they were right there. But every other year, PlayStation kind of handled the above. I'm actually surprised at how far back Nintendo is in all of this, and maybe it's just because of our circle that's very heavy Nintendo fans that I feel like Nintendo gets all the coverage.
Well, they were doing terribly until the Switch was announced.
That's true. And they have definitely increased over the last couple of years significantly. Yeah. So, yeah. But when you are now looking at this, it seems like as far as they spent basically $0 and still got almost as many mentions as Xbox and really almost on par exactly with Nintendo. I feel like for the cost of $0, you got to be pretty happy for your PlayStation, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not almost at Microsoft. They're decently far away. They're a quarter away.
Dollar for dollar investment, I say they probably came out ahead.
Yeah, yes, it is rather puzzling that there are that many mentions for the PlayStation brand. So good for them, I guess.
To give context, there were more mentions for the PlayStation brand this year than there were for Nintendo last year when Nintendo was there.
Yes. Even 2 years ago when they announced the Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just Sony just has this built-in base that whatever the reason, I don't know what they were writing about. Is it like, Sony's still not here? Here's some more articles about Sony PlayStation.
Well, I think probably more than anything what it related to, if you look at all the top games, so they also listed the top 15 video games by number of articles or mentions. It was Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Marvel Avengers, Jedi Fallen Order, Watch Dogs Legion, Doom Eternal, Breath of the Wild sequel, FIFA 20, Destiny 2, Gears 5. So you have to go down, what is that? 7, 8 to get to an Xbox exclusive.
Yep.
You had a Nintendo exclusive earlier, and then it's Fallout 76, Elden Ring, Halo Infinite, Apex Legends, and The Witcher 3, oddly enough.
Oh,
so, probably because it's coming to Switch, I'm guessing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But realistically, of the top 15 games that were talked about, only 3 of them aren't coming to PlayStation. So I'm sure a lot of those articles said, this game is coming to this and this,
I'm going to argue it's more impressive than the Microsoft one. because by all means, Sony should have just been right in the same number as them because of all the cross-platform gaming.
I mean, that's an angle you can take, I guess.
Yeah, that's the one I'm taking.
That's, that they didn't do a stage show for or anything and announce any of those games, but that's cool.
I don't know if platforms in the media like this volume like necessarily dictates. That's just media writing pieces. It's not necessarily like stage. Well, obviously, it's not stage presence.
Right.
And it might not be what either of these companies monetize off of. Like their PlayStation is going, oh, we were successful. They might just be like, hey, we were consistently in the media, but we lost our 4-year winning streak.
Right.
Or a 3-year, well, almost 4-year winning streak.
Yeah.
A little hiccup from Xbox. Yeah, it makes sense that most of these games are also on PlayStation. I do honestly think they're still in the reporting because of people were just talking about them not being at E3 still. Like that was still in the media.
Right.
And there's still things written about it. But yeah, like why PlayStation was smart because they did what Microsoft maybe should have done. Microsoft didn't really have a lot to talk about next gen. And maybe Microsoft should have done a direct style. I know like it's the big show for Microsoft. And they they like to have their fans in the crowd, and then they take care of their fans. That's their big thing. The fan fest, having the fans come to the the press conference. So they go big for their fan base, which I really appreciate. And I'm not saying that Sony doesn't.
Right.
But that's just why I don't think we would see Microsoft taking a step back from that. But if that was the situation where PlayStation's going, well, we have all these games we could show, but we don't really have anything we want to talk about console-wise, so we're just not going to go.
Right.
Thinking that maybe Microsoft was going to do that, or maybe they already knew that Microsoft wasn't going to talk about much. I don't really know like the insider stuff on that, but good for them, I guess. I feel weird about saying that because like they didn't do anything. So good for them that they still got media like presentation, media coverage. But I don't know that it's a case for Microsoft to not do it again. And I don't know that it's a case for Sony to skip it next year.
Right.
Because I think next year is the big year. This year is like the off year, the fluke year, which we have every, 6 years or so.
Yeah. It is very interesting that, only so much can be gleaned from this. And obviously it's just an interesting anecdote. It's not 100% indicative because who knows, what the rest of the year will hold. This is a moment in time of how things kind of looked and all that good stuff. So
PlayStation 4 had over 18,000 articles from E3 2019.
Yes.
They were number one in articles.
Yes. Why? Keeping in mind, though, that Xbox One, Xbox Scarlet, and all that are split out as different things.
Sure. But what did they have to write about?
Again, I think it's just that
PlayStation 3 is on there.
I know. So is the Wii
2,000
U.
articles about PlayStation 3. At least there was a game announced for the Wii U.
That's true. There was a game announced for the Wii. That's very true. Yeah. Well, it's okay. PlayStation 5 got just a couple more mentions than the PlayStation 3 did. So.
Yeah, it's insane.
And Xbox Scarlet far outshined PlayStation 5 as far as articles go. So there you go. But yeah, it's just, like I said, an interesting, I thought, anecdote about, there was a lot of hemming and hawing about who or whether this was a good move for them. And even after the press conference, there was a lot of folks talking about, was this a good decision by them? Was this not a bad decision, a bad decision by them? I think, to me personally, what this data shows is that this potentially could have been a good decision. It depends what they do next.
Yeah.
So, because they still got some good coverage and they now have a place to, I don't necessarily want to say counterpunch, but they now can put their story out, or they can control their narrative in the way they want to moving forward. So they have a good base to work off of, but they have to work off of that base. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, hey, that is it for all of the gaming news. And like I said, there was a big beefy boatload. We, for the video game portion, covered some topics we wouldn't typically cover. So if you kind of enjoyed that, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to go and just round the show out and call it a night because we have been going for quite some time and we want to be as respectful of everyone's time as we can be. So, Josh, let's go ahead, leave our dear listeners with our recommendations for living a well-rounded life. While we're obviously a gaming podcast, we want to give you one recommendation, suggestion, or thing we are currently into that is helping us live that well-rounded life. Josh, what is your suggestion, good sir?
Cook something new.
You did that.
I did do that.
And how did it go? Was it delicious?
It was amazing. I can't wait to cook it again. Yeah, cook something new. Cook something that you've always wanted to cook or something you don't think that you can cook. Even if you just like open up a cookbook, or if you don't have a cookbook, go to Barnes & Noble, buy one of those clearance cookbooks, or go online if you have an idea of what you want to cook. For me, I want to say like 6 to 10 years ago on the Food Network, they were doing their Thanksgiving live cooking thing. So like Alton Brown, all these people were in this kitchen cooking different meals for this big feast, and Giada De Laurentiis was there.
Yeah. And
she cooked drunken noodles or drunken pasta, which I had never heard of. And it's essentially cooking pasta in wine. You're boiling away the alcohol, but you cook it in it. So I've always wanted to try it. As an Italian, I've never heard of this. It was very intriguing to me. So I decided, like, that's what I want to do on Father's Day. I want to cook my wife a meal for Father's Day. So that's what I did. I got a sweet red wine and I looked up how to cook. So this is what I learned. So we talked about the chef show last week and how it's like take your time with your ingredients. So like everything I bought that I had not cooked with, I looked up how to rinse, cut, and cook each individual recipe, like each individual food. Took me like an extra 5 minutes. It was not a big deal. And I felt much better about it. I felt much more confident about cooking it. And I thought it was awesome. I thought it came out great. It came out perfect. Like I had no issues. Everything cooked well. I probably needed to get a bigger pan, which I thought I was okay with. And it was a little shallow for what I was trying to do. But without going into like the whole meal preparation, how I cooked it, like, and I can't wait to try something new again. We're also going to try that same recipe, but using a regular red wine instead of a sweet. But I thought it was perfect. Nice, sweet, purple noodles. It was really interesting how it cooked out and it tasted great. And I can't wait to do it again. So challenge yourself, cook something new or cook something for the first time if you're not a person who cooks.
Absolutely. And the reason you may not have heard of it is drunken noodles, I think, are actually a Thai thing.
Okay, so drunken pasta.
Yeah, so yeah, drunken noodles, I believe, is actually a Thai dish. But I know that it is. When I lived in Fargo, we had a restaurant called Drunken Noodle.
Oh.
And it was excellent. But yeah, I believe it comes from the Thai world.
There you go.
So, but yeah, I obviously fully agree and endorse the cook something. I made an offhanded comment to my wife about we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do in our backyard. We really haven't done anything since we moved in here other than it is grass for our dogs to play in. And we're trying to figure out landscaping and, maybe next summer we'll do that. And I made an offhanded jokey comment about putting a wood fire pizza oven in. And she didn't say no. So now I'm thinking, but you don't see many houses with a random wood fire pizza oven in the backyard.
Just Guy Fieri's house.
And I don't really have a house I don't have this huge extravagant house. So I think it'd really be out of place, but I kind of want it. So anyway, maybe I'll have everyone over for pizzas one day. But my recommendation this week is actually randomly when Josh and I, dear listener, on Friday night streamed on Mixer Dead Space 3. And Josh and I don't do this very often, and it was a very spur of the moment thing. But we had a great time.
Yes.
And while we were doing it, my wife came downstairs and grabbed something from where our board games are and went back upstairs. So I thought she was learning a board game to play on Saturday, when in fact what she was doing was a puzzle.
Nice.
And then on Saturday, she said, "Hey, will you do this puzzle with me?" And in my life, I have never enjoyed puzzles, ever.
Really?
And I sat down.
But you're a problem solver.
I know, right? But I've always found them boring. I sat down and I started working on this puzzle. And before I knew it, 2.5 hours had flown by.
Wow.
I had just been like in this zone of working on this, and I had a phenomenal time.
Nice.
I really enjoyed it. So not only am I recommending doing a puzzle, but maybe if there was something you did that you used to do that you didn't like very much, or kind of had this notion that you felt about it, maybe revisit it. Maybe you'd be surprised. And by doing this puzzle, we discovered we only had one puzzle in our house. I bought 2 more puzzles. So now we have 3. So I'm really looking forward to doing some more puzzles this weekend.
We want to do puzzles. Do you have that puzzle roll-up thing? Because we need to get like one of those things where we can actually keep the puzzle when we're done.
We don't, because we only had one puzzle in our house, but both the 2 new puzzles I bought are the ones that are kind of like the plastic pieces. Have you seen
the 3D
these?
ones? Yeah.
No, not the 3D ones. They're like
pieces.
they're like stained glass.
Oh.
So when you're done, you can pick them up and hold them up to the window.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really. I had never heard of it. There was a couple Disney ones. I said this seems cool.
Was there a Little Mermaid one? I'll have to find one.
One of them that I got is the princesses, or some of the princesses, and the other one is just a whole bunch of like a big mosaic of a whole bunch of the movies. So,
well, you'll have to send me a link so I can check those out.
I will do that. All right, Josh, what do you say we wrap this show up?
What a great, stunning, marvelous idea. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. In addition to finding us on Twitter and Instagram at Board with VG, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Board with VG. So feel free to give us a 5-star rating over there. Also, if you want to communicate in the more long form, if you're not feeling social media, please feel free to email us at boardwithvg@gmail.com. We tag our stuff with #BoardWithVG. So please use that hashtag as well on all social media. Whatever podcast service you are listening to us on, we encourage you to give us a stellar rating. That is, whether you're downloading us from the PSVG feed, the Dice Tower Network feed, or our very own standalone Board with Video Games feed. You can find me online at Why So Serious on Xbox Live and PlayStation Network. That's SIRRIUS. And I promise next week I will share my Switch code, as I will be buying Catan for the Switch in 2 days.
Oh, excellent. You can find me at all the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Board Game Geek, all at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media, because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. And remember, everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.